All right, today we are joined by Taylor Sears, who is CEO of a couple of family-owned companies, Silent Guard Security and Davis HVAC Experts. Really interesting story. He's got a great background and a great success story in his company. So we're going to explore all kinds of interesting things today. Taylor, why don't you first just introduce yourself? Tell us a little bit about who you are and what you do.
Yeah. Thanks, John. Thanks for having me on here. This is awesome. I appreciate the opportunity to talk a little bit about what we do and share. Hopefully, somebody can learn something from some of the things we've learned over the years. So,
Yeah.
my name is Taylor Sears. I am, like John said, I'm the chief operating officer. I joke that I'm working a family business, so my mom makes up the title. So, it's, take that for what it's worth. I'll explain a little bit more about what I do in a second. But yeah, so we have two different divisions of our business. We have Silent Guard Security, which is a low voltage integrator. We've got offices in Somerset, Kentucky and Lexington, Kentucky. We started as an alarm company in 1994, doing residential alarm systems, and won't bore you with all the specifics, but a lot's changed in the last 30 years, where now we do primarily commercial work. We do fire alarms, access control, video surveillance, gates. We still do security systems, a lot of home automation, and much more than that. But it's all in the low voltage, world. And then the other side of that, we have another division of our business that I oversee the operations of as well, called Davis HVAC Experts. So we're a heating and air conditioning company. If you're familiar with Kentucky and you've heard of Lake Cumberland, we are located in Somerset, Kentucky, and we work primarily around the lake. So our service territory in HVAC, we do mostly residential, so a lot of service repairs, replacements. We do light commercial in that world. We do new construction, but it's interesting. They're very different businesses in a lot of ways, but there's a lot of similarities. So
Sure.
wear a lot of hats on a given day, but we have a general manager that oversees the day-to-day stuff in the weeds on both of those sides, and both of those guys, I guess, technically report to me in our structure, and I'm
Mhm.
responsible for everything that's going on. So unless sometimes I'd say I don't want to be involved in it, my mom steps in. She's still the boss. So, yeah, so anyways, that's a
There you
little
go.
bit about what I do in our business.
Cool. And we are in the midst of a major heat wave.
Yeah.
So you're probably your HVAC side is probably getting slammed, I would
Yeah,
guess.
it's a little hectic. We were talking about this yesterday. We are as busy right now, like abnormally busy from a summer standpoint, because we kind of skipped spring and went straight from cool weather into extreme heat, right? So
Hmm.
the good thing about those, the weather in Kentucky kind of ramping up a little bit is like everybody has a chance for their stuff to break kind of incremental. There's like stuff breaks along the way.
Right.
I mean, as you know, we've got so much heat and so immediate this summer that everybody's stuff is breaking at once. And yeah, keep those guys in your prayers that are out servicing, working on people's units. And I ran a service call yesterday to a friend of mine, and his house, it was 83 degrees in the house, and
Hmm.
he's 30 years old and can handle it. But there's a lot of these people that are elderly and maybe
Yeah.
not as good as health. What we do is we're not just providing heat and air to people; we're providing comfort and safety in their homes and
Sure.
businesses. And
One of my clients is actually in her house right now without air
yeah,
conditioning. She's
oh,
miserable.
I'm
Yeah.
sure it's awful. We are doing this, and as is every other heating and air company, and we're doing the best we can to get to everybody as quick as we
Oh yeah.
can. But there's a finite amount of time in the day, and yeah. So think about us and be patient, please, with all the guys that are out there getting after it.
Absolutely. So we joked earlier about your background. You've kind of got like you didn't jump straight into the family business. You did what a lot of and a lot of family business owners I know will encourage their children to go off and learn some other
Yeah,
stuff, experience some other businesses, and then decide. And
yeah.
you were one of those who did that and then decide to come back to the business. Tell a little bit about your journey because you kind of had a couple of like jobs that guys like me would go, man, those sound like pretty fun, cool
Yeah.
jobs.
Yeah, so I would start off by saying, I've got to do some cool stuff, and I was the low man on the totem pole in these experiences, right? So, all they were cool, and I got to be around some really awesome stuff. I got to learn and absorb, because one of the most valuable things that I'll share in a minute from the experience I had was I always got to be the least intelligent, least wise, least experienced person in the room, and
Mm,
I got to learn a lot from that. So Yeah, the short of it is I played college baseball. I played a couple years at Morehead State University and then transferred to Northern Kentucky University. So I finished college at NKU and played baseball there and got to stay in the Cincinnati area after school. Really wasn't sure what I wanted to do. I studied business with a minor in sports administration. So kind of always had an interest in following this path of professional athletics, or specifically I wanted to work in the apparel industry, athletic apparel for somewhere like Nike, Under Armour, Adidas, that type of thing. That was like my dream goal.
Yeah.
And got an opportunity to kind of work in that world to some degree. My first job out of college, thanks to an awesome professor that took me under her wing, Jenny Gardner was her name. She helped make a connection, and I'm forever indebted to her because it has changed my life. But I got to work for the Cincinnati Bengals. So I was an equipment manager, and I got to I worked there for 1 year. It was the 2015 season when they were really good and made it to the playoffs and thought we were going to get our first playoff win in a long time and got our hearts broken by the Steelers. But I'm a diehard Bengals fan, so that
Yeah.
was really cool.
I remember that year too. Yeah.
Yeah, it was disappointing. I won't get into the specifics, but there were some penalties at the end of the game that Bengals fans will never forget. So,
Right.
anyways, that was a cool experience getting to be around, that people that operate at that level and the expectations of the leaders, of the professionalism. I'm talking about the ownership, as well as the head coaches, as well as my boss, a guy named Jeff Brickner, who is as blue collar as can be. He's no nonsense, and like, you're there to do a job. And I learned how to be a leader from him, but then also how to go about our business and take care of things and just do your job.
Mhm.
And then was able to now utilize some of the stuff I learned in inventory management and some of that type of stuff to apply to heating and air and security and some other things. So
Yeah.
um, the next step in my career, I was wanting to follow that opportunity into working into professional sports. But the long story short, there was a guy that got elected to be the governor of the state of Kentucky that I had crossed paths with and had built a little bit of a relationship with. So Matt Bevin was his name. He was elected governor of Kentucky in 2015 and took office, for 2016 was his first year in office. And he reached out to me and asked if I would come work with him. So I got to be his, what was called the political term called a body man. And basically, I always joke that I was just the chief of stuff, not staff, but stuff. And I got to, I was 23 years old and got to travel with him everywhere that he went while, he was in office and I was working with him. Every meeting that he was in, every room that he was in, whether it was the president of the United States, the prime minister of Canada, or, we were visiting a coffee shop in some small town in Kentucky where he's just popping in to say hello and they've got a need that they want met too, right? I got to be involved in that and just observe the way he leads and the way he led our state, and then also his office, even how we manage
Mhm.
staff and all that kind of stuff. And I got an MBA without going to college working with
Yeah.
him. So
Yeah.
incredible opportunity that then led into working in the economic development cabinet in the state of Kentucky. So got to negotiate with companies trying to entice them to come to Kentucky. Got
Mhm.
to negotiate tax incentive deals and tax rebates and different things to convince these companies and these CEOs of major corporations to do an expansion in Kentucky or build a new headquarters or build a new manufacturing facility. And that was a cool experience, but then finally had the change of heart for whatever reason. I had never was interested in doing what I'm doing now, but
Mhm.
decided it was time. And I still don't totally know why I did it, but to come back into the family business. And that was in 2019. And here we are today, and I've never looked back.
Yeah. So you had a great, I mean, first say 4 years of just great education, different experience, but high performing organizations. I mean,
Yeah.
you make a lot of jokes about government and stuff like that, but Matt Bevin was a certainly brilliant businessman, and
Yeah.
people, he was a very
It's
people loved him or hated him, but he was there's no doubt he had a brilliant
yeah.
business mind.
I loved. I think I mean, I obviously have very strong feelings for that guy, and he has changed my life. Like I talked about Jenny Gardner and Jeff Brickner, two of those guys, or Jenny and Jeff, and then Matt Bevin especially, that have made an impact on my life and impact the way that I go about my day every day.
Yeah.
And I learned so much from Matt Bevin just by him letting me be and have a seat at the table, even I got to sit and watch his body language when he's in a meeting with somebody that I know he's not happy with, and how he carries that conversation, right?
Yeah.
Little things. He got on to me one time just because he didn't want this done this way, but we went into a meeting where we had prepared all these materials, and as soon as we got in there, well, I brought him in and I start passing them out, and he told me afterwards, he's like, let's not do that, because as soon as you start handing people that, they start going through it and you lose their
Yeah.
attention. It wasn't pertinent for them to have it, but like I could go on and on and on of just little things I learned from him that
Sure.
impact the way, I run a meeting now.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, just being around high performance individuals is one of those things that so many people just don't get a chance,
yeah.
to do. And so you got great indoctrination in there. So tell us a little bit about the family business. How, your parents started the business. Tell a little of that background.
Yeah. So, kind of, since there's two pieces of the business, I'll tell you the short of how we got to where we're at today. Right. So we started as a division of the South Kentucky Rural Electric. So RACC, we were the security division of that company. And my dad worked there since the beginning. And, first, they were making some corporate changes in structure and some of the divisions of the business. And in 2000, my parents decided, they were in their early 30s, and when the RACC was getting out of the industry, they decided to make an offer to buy Silent Guard Security from South Kentucky RACC. So my dad had been there since the beginning as part of a very small team, but they didn't own it until 2000, or 2000, 2001, I forget exactly. But so yeah, my entire family are entrepreneurs and have started business. My grandparents started our heating and air business in 1980. Both of my uncles and my mom on that side of the business have worked in that company. All of my cousins had worked there. My mom and dad have worked there, over the course of time. There was only one person in our business, or in our family, that had never worked at Davis
Oh, really?
HVAC, and that was me. And I had hung out around my grandpa, but never had, I'd rode with him on service calls as a little kid, but I never worked there. I was never on payroll. And
Yeah.
I mean, I wasn't doing any work to justify that either, right? But
Yeah. Yeah.
um, but anyways, my grandparents were kind of looking to get out of the business a few years ago, and my uncles are two of the best heating and air guys in this entire part of the state. I'd put them up against anybody. I mean, Corey and Buddy are their names, and they're incredibly talented and knowledgeable. But the business had just gotten to a size that they needed some more help. And
Hmm.
so my parents and I took our responsibilities of what we do in Silent Guard, and we acquired that business from my grandparents. And that was in 2021. So now I can no longer say I'm not the only person in the family that's never worked there, because I do now. So that's kind of cool. But and I changed a capacitor yesterday. And if you would have asked me 5 years ago on a service call that I diagnosed myself, and 5 years ago I wouldn't even known what a capacitor was. So
Right.
yeah, I'm still not a service tech, but I've learned a lot. But so anyways, that's kind of how we got into this. And when I started in 2019, we had 17 people at the time, and
Hmm.
my mom and dad were in a really comfortable situation in terms of the business was growing, but it wasn't growing at a rate that they had to do a whole lot more. But it also was at a point where just operationally it couldn't do anymore. So
Hmm.
they were trying to figure out, do we sell the business to somebody? Private equity loves getting into this space on the security side,
Yeah.
heating and air too. Uh,
Right.
but that was not even involved at the time. Or do we just keep doing what we're doing and try to be more hands on? They just really didn't know what to do. That's kind of why I stepped in. So what they asked me to do was, if you're going to come, we can be as big and as great of a company as we want to be if we'll just figure out how to do that. So
Yeah.
my responsibility for the first year that I was here was to not accept the way that we do things as the gospel, but
Hmm.
utilize relationships in the industry we have across the whole country to go learn what's the best way. What are we not doing we need to be doing? And
Hmm.
I came back after spending the better part of a year traveling to friends around the country, and created this playbook of, this is how I want to reinvent our company, not in terms of what we do and the way we treat people, but the way we do it, and
Right.
our operations. And that was in 2019, and as of today, we've now absorbed the heating and air division. We've got just under 50 people. Our total revenue has more than quadrupled since then, or it's
Mm.
about four times what it was. So it's close to quadruple what it was in 2019. I got to make a lot of changes that we didn't reinvent the wheel. We've not done anything that's new and proprietary,
Mhm.
right? We've just utilized relationships and friends to increase our capacity and hire really, really good people. And we've built an awesome team that is getting better with every hire. So, yeah, that's where we started to where we're at today.
Yeah, that's awesome. So you literally you come in this opportunity, you and your parents think strategically here, and instead of going just, hey, dive in and let's start churning and burning,
Yeah.
you actually said, let's spend some time and actually learn. Sound like you
Yeah.
did a nationwide tour of friends and companies and just spent time learning,
Yeah.
which is incredible to think, that your parents and you would have that kind of vision to go that this makes sense to actually dedicate
Yeah.
time to not.
I think
People
that's
would
a
say
hard
that's not productive, right?
It's a hard
But
thing to do because one, I had to get paid, right? I had to, if I was
yeah.
to work here, I had to be on payroll. So I couldn't do it for free. But because the business was healthy, like, it was healthy at the time financially, and it was healthy in terms of the structure at the capacity we were doing, we were functioning. I
Hmm.
wouldn't say we were thriving, but we were surviving.
Right.
And so there was room financially to put me on payroll and not absorb or be a detriment to the business. But then because there wasn't an immediate need that I was coming in to fill, I had the time to do this, right?
Yeah.
So it wasn't like, to your point, it wasn't like we were needing an accountant and I was coming in to be our accountant. We weren't needing another install technician. I was coming in to do that, or sales, or whatever. So yeah, it wasn't. I mean, that's totally credit to my parents. I think family business is a hard thing, especially as you transition from one generation to the next in terms of leadership.
Hmm.
And I've read a lot about family business, and it one of the hardest things in family business is to transition from one generation to the next when the second one is still alive, and it's even
Yeah.
harder when they're still alive and in the business.
Yeah.
And my mom and dad are, they're young and they're alive and healthy, and we work together every day. So we found a way to make
Yeah.
it work. But credit to my parents, because I thought this was a preconceived notion I have, that I would be micromanaged and they wouldn't be open to, especially when the kids come in of like, I want to do all this stuff. They gave me free reign to, if I believed in it and was committed to it, to make it happen. Uh,
Yeah.
Not
But
without hard, but
yeah, well, that's cool. And I'm a business coach, and people hire me to help them do things like what you're talking about. And I I don't know how many times I've had people say, "Oh, we're rock and rolling. We don't need to hire a coach." They think they need to hire somebody to help them
yeah,
when they're struggling, which is the worst time to do it.
yeah.
Y'all were smart enough and had enough visionary to go, we're comfortable right now, so let's spend some time working, on the business
Yeah.
instead of in the business and see what we can do.
I think, you know, comfort. I say this all the time, and I think now you just said comfortable. That might be a better fit, but I always say that let's be content with where we're at, but we can't get complacent.
Yeah.
So, but I think comfort can be, you can get comfortable and you can get content.
Oh yeah,
Um,
absolutely.
so that maybe I need to change that word to comfortable instead of content. But so we had a conversation this morning. We had a meeting with our technicians, and I told them this, and I mean it sincerely, that I've been around in this business my entire life, and
Mhm.
I've not worked here, on payroll full time since 2019, but I've been around it my whole life. And
Right.
we have as good of a team of people that work with us, from our field technician to our sales team to our back end operations to accounting to every piece of the business is as good or better than it has ever been. And it goes so smooth 99% of the time, but we're not
Hmm.
perfect. And we implemented this. You've probably heard of the book Traction by Gino
Yeah.
Wickman. So we implemented EOS to some degree, our version of EOS. We didn't
Yeah.
follow it to a T. But
I do the same thing with a lot of clients. I'm
yeah,
very familiar with that.
I think it's a great book and it's a great reference, and some people need to follow it exactly, and maybe we'd be better off if we did, but we didn't. And but one of those things is you create what your core values are.
Yeah.
And one of our core values, getting to where we were just talking about, is the idea of Kaizen, of continuous improvement. And
Mhm.
we have this mindset across our whole team, from, a technician that just starts with us that's worked in a manufacturing facility for most of his career, to the lady that's working in payables named Crystal that's worked with us since I was 9 years old.
Mhm.
Everybody is looking for opportunities every single day to make the business better, because we all benefit when that's the case. So we don't run this place like a dictatorship. And I feel confident you could ask anybody that works here. Because of EOS and the way we make decisions and we handle things, we don't do things without getting the input and the involvement of everybody in the company that's going to affect. And then
Mhm.
we get buy-in because we're all a part of those decision-making processes. And that's the coolest thing from when I started in 2019 and we started doing all of this stuff and making changes in how we operate. We were ripping the band-aid off of things that had been done the same way since 1994. And really, a lot of the things we were doing since 1994 were the same way that my grandpa had been doing it since 1980, because my parents copied a lot of what he did, right?
Right.
So that was a big change for people. But
Give me an example of one of those things. What's one of those
so
things that
like
really like that different?
so okay, this talk about improving capacity. You've got to operate more efficiently to be able to
Mhm.
have more capacity, right? So the way we used to schedule jobs and tickets on the heating and air side was a 5x8 business or index card. So
Mhm.
they would have a 5x8 index card. My granddad had wrote, we're going to John Jennings' house, we're changing out a 3-ton unit, whatever it was. Well, they would show up in the mornings and he would pass the index cards out, and then they would know where they're going. And maybe hopefully it'd have the address written on it. So, that's how we did it on the heating and air side since 1980. We did that same thing at Silent Guard too, but it had evolved a little bit now, where we had printed out service tickets and we would pass those out. And, we would have
Mhm.
handwritten paperwork that the salesperson that did it would put together a folder, and we would handwrite the customer's name 15 times, and
Right.
John Jennings might be spelled John, it might be spelled Jon, it may be spelled, any
Right.
whatever way. Uh,
Jenkins is a common one I
yeah,
get.
Sean Jenkins. So then who knows how it's going to get put into our accounting system and all of that kind of stuff. And one of the things that I did was, again, we didn't reinvent the wheel. We just looked at what's out there and how can we utilize it. So we brought in software to automate that stuff, in terms of now, if John Jennings becomes a customer of Silent Guard or of Davis, when the salesperson creates the proposal in our CRM, in our quoting software and our customer management software, that lives, and that is now created across the entire process. And it's an
Mhm.
automated process where that whole workflow, now instead of a physical folder we've got to keep track of, well, it's in our system. And now when I schedule that for Taylor Sears and Ben Purcell to go do the install, well, it pops up on their tablet with their work order. Now they have all the correct information in the paperwork. And
Yeah.
we're able to bill things, we've been able to expedite the billing process now, because instead of praying that folder with all the information comes back, and a lot of times it wouldn't, or it would get set on somebody's desk. Well, now we can not only bill, the same day, or, if we got to process it and, do some audits and stuff, maybe the next day, so we can make sure the bill is accurate and gets out in a timely manner. So now
Yeah.
we're billing for things, the work that we've done, today, versus maybe it's 6 months from now because we just found the folder. And but we've done that across a lot of our
Yeah.
processes, in terms of automation.
Yeah. So I've been involved with those types of projects. Where, I think my background's in IT and implemented all those systems. And then when I was in the low voltage audio video industry, and we had the same kind of thing. Everything was spreadsheets
Yeah,
and emails. We not necessarily handwritten 3x5 cards, but still it was,
yeah,
the same concepts. And it was such a culture change. I mean, it probably took a year to implement, and it probably took a couple more years
yeah,
for it really to take hold.
yeah.
How did you obviously accomplished that at a lot greater speed than we did. So, what was the secret to that going faster? Because I see this, I still see this today. I see
Yeah.
companies are completely manual, and they need to automate, and they fight it and they fight it.
So I think the automated piece was just a piece of the larger puzzle, right? Automating some of the workflows. What I did, and I had time at the beginning before I started traveling was I literally sat down with everybody in our office to understand one, because I was ignorant in terms of how we do things for one, and I didn't even know what everybody did. So, I would sit down with Crystal and say, Crystal, what do you do? And where do you have frustrations? What is part of your day that holds you up or prevents you from doing your job? And I did that amongst our entire team. So like, one of the things we used to do on the silent guard side, we have to get contracts signed, right? So
Hmm.
um, I kept finding them like, well, Greg has to drive an hour away to get this contract signed because this little old lady, wants to she doesn't want to sign it day of. She wants to get it signed, when we're there before we get there and all this stuff. So now we've spent 2 hours driving an hour there and an hour back just to get a contract signed. And, it takes up a lot of time. It's just super inefficient. So I went through our entire business of like, what are things that just frustrate you or hold you back from being able to do what your job is?
Right.
And so compiled this massive list of things, and I called it our current issues. And then we started to like piece them together of like, okay, this affects this, and this affects this, and this person is affected by their job. And we pulled together a list of all of our current issues and tried to figure out what is the root cause affecting all these things. And then we went and sought out solutions. And as part of our leadership team that we created through the EOS process, we would then, before we would implement a solution, we would come together to say, okay, how do we think this could be solved, or what would make this better? And then let's find a software that we could either bring in to use or something that's already in our existing software. Let's see what exists that maybe we're not using. But we didn't just try to solve the surface level issue, right? We started
Hmm.
to, because like that contract thing is a great example. So it's one thing to use something like DocuSign, right, to be able to send an automated
Sure.
document, but you still have to manually, type that up and create the document. So what we were able to do was we had an issue with parts not getting quoted correctly. We would sell X part when we needed Y part, and it would get to the warehouse and the wrong thing would get shipped to the job. So we found a quoting software that allows us to control what's in there and what's not in there. And then as we
Yeah.
create the quotes, it integrates with an e-signature platform, which also solved that problem, which then
Yep.
we can get signed. And then as soon as that contract is signed, the software knows that it's been won, and it pushes it to our scheduling department to get the process started on it just was like piece after piece after piece.
Yeah.
But the biggest thing was we didn't try to solve surface level problems. We tried to get deeper into it of what can we fix at the root level. And then the other piece was we got the involvement of the people that were engaged in using that to help us create the solution. Because
Yeah.
I think the biggest struggle, and I've got a lot of friends around the country that have came into similar scenarios that I've been in, and it's not worked as well for them. And I don't think that we're anything that special in terms of we're so smart we just did it perfectly. I just think the way we went about it, of it wasn't me trying to solve the problems. Somebody has to steer the ship, but we
Hmm.
we tried to solve them as a team, which then
Yeah.
got everybody's buy-in to buy into it, right, and make it happen,
Right.
make it work.
Cool. Well, and there's a lot of great thoughts and tips there. I mean, the number of people, like you said, surface level problems, people that just put band-aids on things instead of really looking at what the root cause is. That's that going deep, and solving problems. And then, yeah, just looking for that workflow, to not look at things as silos, but
Yeah.
looking across that. There's some really good advice there. So what are some of the challenges you're looking to uh, face next? What's on your
Yeah. So
vision?
we are growing, right? And that's a good thing on one hand, and it's a challenge on others. I think what makes us really special on both sides of our business is that our mission is, I mean, is to take care of people, right? It's to make
Mhm.
their homes and businesses safer, more convenient, and more comfortable. And that's kind of both businesses encompass that.
Yeah,
That's what we're
yeah,
trying to do. And the more you grow, the harder and harder it is to offer that same level of, of care and support, and do it in a fiscally responsible way. So, we could hire a bunch of people and have this incredible level of support, and service, but that comes at a cost, right? So that's one of the big challenges that we're facing, and I'm facing on a day-to-day basis in terms of operating this place is how do we continue to grow in a way that the people that work with us can benefit from it financially and personally and professionally, but do it in a way that it doesn't come at a detriment to our customers, because a lot of our business on both sides, this is a conversation we had earlier in that meeting of, I think our team is so good. We get so much repeat business and referral business because the customer experience that we're obsessed with is so good. And
Yeah.
when people get a taste of, if we come to your house, and you were talking about your friend whose house is hot today, right? Well, another company can come in and put in a new air conditioner and it can get it down to 69 degrees. Davis can come and put an air conditioner in and get it to 69 degrees. No matter what the brand is, whatever it is, people choose to do business with us on both sides of the business because of the way we do business, not just because our parts and products are so much better than others. And we don't have to get into that, but I do think, we intentionally choose products and services because we think they're the best for specific reasons, right? So I think
Right.
if you take the level of customer service and care and the way that we support people and solve problems for people, pair that with products and services that I think are the best that are in the industry on both sides,
Mhm.
that's a dangerous combination for growth, right? It continues to breed more opportunities. Uh,
Yeah.
so yeah, but it's a challenge to maintain that. And it's, we've got, like I said, close to 50 people now. My day-to-day job is less about how do we figure out how to design and sell this alarm system and how do we service this heating and air system, as much as it is of looking at financials and, spreadsheets and, doing IT updates. We're, dealing with people, it's more of
Yeah.
that type of stuff. We started as part of that process. And this is where I think people struggle with being able to implement the change that we have done, is you have to have somebody that has time to work on the business. Now that's
Mhm.
cliche to say, and everybody says I need to work on it and not in it, but you don't always have time to do both of those things. So
Right.
we had me working on it with the help of our team for a couple of years, and then we got to the point in our business where now I still work in the business, but I get to work on it every day. Uh,
Yeah.
and yeah, so
And what do you
that's
think that percentage breakdown is now? I mean, obviously there for a while you were almost 100% on it. Now you're kind of in a, is it 80/20? Is it 50/50? Where do you think
Yeah,
it
I'd
falls?
say probably 75% of my time is spent, like if you think of it in terms of micro and macro, is spent at
Yeah.
the macro level of the business, and
Yeah.
about
On the business. Yeah.
working on the business. And I get to do things, some stuff, I still deal with pricing structures and, using our financials to make decisions on how we're going to budget and, operate the business moving forward. And, I think that's a lot of working on the business, but I do a lot of stuff. Like one thing, the best part of my week that I do every single week is my favorite thing that I do is everybody that we install a new unit for, or we do duct cleaning or new duct work or whatever. I get to write
Hmm.
them a handwritten thank you note and thank them for doing business with us, whether it's their first time, say, hey, thank you so much for choosing our family business. Or, I get to write letters to people that have worked with my grandpa and my uncles and for the last 40 years. And
Yeah.
I love that type of stuff. So, business development, and that's a piece of business development, I guess, to a degree,
Yeah.
and more business strategy of where are we going and how are we going to get there. I'm not as involved in terms of making us actually get there, right?
Yeah.
Mine is more of the planning and the structure and the reasoning.
Right. Yeah. And we always say that ideal entrepreneur that's in a growth mode, is kind of doing a
Yeah.
roughly 80/20, 80% on, 20% in.
Yeah.
You can never really step completely out of it because you have to have your finger on
Yeah.
different things.
So I mean, to that point, that's one thing, one benefit. I actually live in Lexington. So we
Mm.
have an office in Lexington, but our main office where I'm sitting right now is in Somerset, Kentucky. So an hour and a half apart. And because of all of the things, and this is a conversation I've had with my parents a lot of, like, when they were at 17 people and doing X dollars in revenue, they didn't want to do any more because they were at capacity, right? Well, I don't have any more stress in terms of running the business on a day-to-day basis, other than just making sure payroll's met and that type of stuff, than they had at 17 people, because we've been able to operate much more efficiently. And because of these things,
Yeah.
because of what you can do with this and the way we operate the business now. I'm going on vacation in a few weeks, and I can have my finger on the pulse of everything that's happening here, as much as I want to know or as little as I want to know
Right.
from this thing. Whereas
Yeah.
used to, you had to be in it every day
Yeah.
to know what was going on. So the other piece, and this has been the most important thing, I think, is you have to have the right people. And the cool thing about our team right now is, we want everybody working on the business. And our general manager on both sides of our business, Ben on the security side and Matt on the heating and air side, they get to spend a lot of their time working on the business now because we have people that work in the accountability chart, below them on the
Mhm.
chart running
Right.
departments
Yeah.
that are focused on being in it, and they're so focused on their departments. What we have is our accountability chart, and as you go up the chart, you just have more people you're responsible to make sure they're successful. It's not that
Right.
you're their boss. So it's our service coordinator's job to make sure the service department is successful. And we have an installation department, we have a purchasing department. They all report to our general manager. Although he's their boss, right? By I guess technically, it's his job to make sure those departments have the resources to be successful.
Hmm.
And we kind of have flipped the chain of command in terms of how we do things. And I said we're not a dictatorship. I think that's somebody ultimately has to make the decision. But because we've
Sure.
empowered people all along the way to take ownership of what they're responsible for, it's made our company so much better.
Yeah. That's awesome. Uh, well, we could probably talk for hours, and you've done so many great things. It's really, really cool to hear, and I'm sure that's inspiring to others. Um, if you were to give just one piece of advice to a person who's like maybe moving into a new role or taking over, like you coming into an organization that maybe has been stagnant, what piece of advice would you give them?
Yeah, I would say first listen. Listen to the people that work there's needs, and I think
Yeah.
when you come into something new, whether it's a new generation or you're just a new leader in an organization, listening and understanding the people that are already there. Just because they do things a certain way and you want to do it different doesn't necessarily mean they're wrong. You just have a different point of view. They're coming from
Hmm.
the perspective of they've been doing it. You're coming from the perspective of you've seen what else is out there.
Yeah.
So being able to just listen, I think I've been afforded the opportunity. Thankfully, my mom and dad have been doing this a long time, and they're a part of a lot of organizations within the industry, and very well respected just because they're good people, and have built a successful business that helps too. But I was given a cheat code of all of these people and peers in the industry that were willing to share with me. So I would
Mm.
say if you can find a way, even once you get into it, to find places where you can be the least intelligent, least wise, least knowledgeable person in the room about a topic,
Yeah.
those are the places that you'll learn the most. And it's been enlightening too, as I did those travels and all that, to find things. And it was cool to come back and say, hey, we've wanted to find a better way to do this. And I don't know if this is good or bad, but we're really good at it already, right? I've not found
Mhm.
anybody that does it as good as we do. And there's
Yeah.
value in that too. Uh,
Yeah.
so we share that stuff with the team. So I would say, listen to the people that are already there. Um, find ways to learn and grow continuously. Don't get content. Or I'm sorry, be content with where you're at, but don't get complacent. You don't want to
Yeah.
get too comfortable. And then the other thing would be to it starts with your people. So you've got to have the right people and the right seat on the bus and the good.
Yeah. Right seats and right
Yeah.
people in the right
Uh,
seats. Yeah.
but sometimes those people don't come to you with the skills and abilities immediately. So what we try to do a really good job of finding people we have a 3-part interview process, and that we usually don't miss on interviews because of this on candidates. The first one is a judge of their character. Is this the type of personality and things that would fit into our company and in our organization? The second one is judging their competence. So are they competent enough to do the job we're asking them to do? And then the third part is it something they're committed to? And that's more of an interview. That part is more of for them to interview us after they've had, once you've been through a 3 interview process, they've had time to process it. And we want people that want to be here and be a part of what we're doing for the long term. So, are they of high character? Are they competent enough to do the job? And are they committed to being here and being part of what we're doing and committed to the mission? And I think those things are what's helped us to, whatever, however you want to measure success. I think we're successful, and hopefully it'll continue.
Yeah, that's awesome. I've and I'm losing the three. I think it's three H's: humble, hungry, and something else. Have heard. It sounds like the same ones
Yeah,
you're talking about. It's about the character, it's about their skills, and it's about also that hunger. They're going to want
yeah,
to be part of and buy into
yeah.
your vision.
This
Well, this is
this
great
this is a
stuff, Taylor.
special
You've given
place.
us a master class in a lot of things, and I appreciate your time. If people want to meet you or find out more about your companies, what's the best way of
Yeah,
learning about
connect
that?
connect with me on LinkedIn. I love connecting with people on there. John, you're welcome to pass out my cell phone number if you want to do that. I won't say it on here, but yeah, I love learning. I mean, I love fascinated by family business. I love getting the chance to go into somebody else's office, no matter what the industry is, because you always learn something. So
Yeah,
I would love to connect with anybody that's listening to this and teach me. I know I've gotten to learn a lot and I've got to apply a lot, but we also know what we don't know. Know
yeah,
that there's a lot we don't know,
yeah.
and I would love to connect. So connect with me on LinkedIn. My email address, John can share that, taylor.sears@silentguard.net. And you're welcome to pass out my cell phone number too. I'd love to
Awesome.
connect with anybody.
That's great, Taylor. And that idea of being willing to or desiring to not be the smartest person in the room is another just that's so smart and goes against a lot of our culture. People
Yeah.
always want to be the strongest and biggest and baddest in the room. The reality is you learn a lot more when you're not. So
Yeah.
that's a great thing to leave with. So thank
Yeah.
you. Thank you for your time and appreciate you sharing your story.
Yeah. Thank you, John. Thanks for having me.